Well, welcome back to State of the Nation. What an extraordinary day today has been in British politics. The Mandelson scandal still continues. The shockwaves, the ripples carry on. More people leave Downing Street, more people resign. But the question still remains, why did the Prime Minister not know when actually Peter Mandelson said exactly what he was like, exactly who he is, and exactly how he can't be relied on in his own memoirs? Listen to this.
One of the things for which I have attracted criticism from the media is my circle of friends. I admit that I'm more interested in what people do and think than their ideologies, and I judge them by their personal qualities rather than by how they are perceived. There is no escaping the fact that people who are successful in politics, business, journalism, fashion or the arts give off energy, have thought-provoking insights and attract dynamic company around them. I enjoy this, and I have a wide range of friends and acquaintances, mostly outside politics. I make no apology for that. I'm a restless soul.
Well, perhaps this restless soul should have made an apology for that, because the energy given off by Epstein has been catastrophic for anybody who's been at the receiving end of it, and an awful lot of that energy seemed to be tied up with his cash. It's a little surprise, if that's what Mandelson was like, and the Prime Minister knew it and did nothing about it, that today one of the grand fromages, one of the big cheeses of Labour, comes out and calls for him to go, because this man is facing immediate elections. And if you've got an electorate hot on your tail, of course you don't want to be carrying the burden that Starmer has become to his party. This is what Sarwar had to say earlier today.
It isn't easy. And it's not without pain, as I have a genuine friendship with Keir Starmer. But my first priority and my first loyalty is to my country, Scotland. That's why the distraction needs to end and the leadership in Downing Street has to change. It is so obvious that we desperately need change in Scotland.
Well, there's a wonderful quotation from Canning about saving us from the candid friend. I'm not sure Sarwar and Starmer's friendship is that deep, but there we go. Sarwar thinks it is. But he had to say this because he is facing the electorate in not many weeks, in early May, a really important election for the Scottish Parliament. And Starmer's been all over the place. It's much the same as when he said about Jeremy Corbyn that Jeremy Corbyn was his great friend, and then a little bit later that Jeremy Corbyn had never been a friend of his. So we can have a look at what he said about Peter Mandelson, how much he liked him, and then how much he didn't. Listen to this.
The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret for his association with him. He's right to do so. I have confidence in him. Throughout the process and beyond the process. He lied, and he lied again to my team.
Well, so he's got confidence in a man who lied and lied and lied. This is absolutely brilliant, but it shows a fundamental lack of judgment, doesn't it? That most of us have some sense of when people are lying. And though we can get it wrong on occasions, if somebody lies to you once, you don't believe them again. Yet everyone knows that Peter Mandelson's whole career was built on lies. What he did was debauch British politics through a means of spin that is one of the reasons nobody trusts any of our politicians anymore. He has been a canker in British political life for the best part of 4 decades. So Starmer should have known, but he had no judgment. Mind you, he never seems to have judgment, because the one thing you don't want to hear is that Keir Starmer has confidence in you, because the moment he says it, you're basically heading towards the guillotine, not in this modern age a physical guillotine, but one that gets you out of your job, because he had confidence in Mandelson. Then, of course, he had confidence in Mr. McSweeney. Listen to this.
Does he have the same full confidence in Morgan McSweeney that he had in Peter Mandelson?
Prime Minister. McSweeney is an essential part of my team. He helped me change the Labour Party and win an election. Of course I have confidence in him.
Well, isn't that wonderful? Morgan McSweeney, did you hear those words? As an essential part of my team. And what was it Pat McFadden said yesterday morning? That it would make no difference if McSweeney went. And so McSweeney goes. So an essential part of the team is gone, and somebody who makes no difference goes. This is really important, because ultimately the boss has to make the final choice. And that's where he has failed again and again, taking responsibility for the choices that he made. I've always been very struck by a book called Icon Basiliki, which was written in the voice of Charles I as Charles I was going to the scaffold. And Charles I said that he thought this was his punishment for letting his close advisor Thomas Wentworth go to the scaffold first. Leaders who drop their closest advisors never come out of it well. It always means that the end is near and that they will leave without credit or honour because of their failure to be loyal to those who are around them. But Starmer has no judgment. And there's one more point that's worth making. Peter Mandelson's not the only person who's been involved in sleaze scandals, though Mandelson's is far worse, who Starmer decided to rehabilitate. I was listening to the wireless this morning and I heard the dulcet tones of Jackie Smith, Baroness Smith of Morven, famous for the best quality water. And Baroness Smith, you will remember, resigned in 2009 as Home Secretary because she was found to have misdeclared her expenses by the Standards Commissioner of the House of Commons. Starmer, who came into office saying he was the most honest man you'd ever met, whiter than white, a former prosecutor, a son of a toolmaker, he was the angelic chorus in person, turned out to have promoted people who had sleaze as a background. And that's before I get into the convicted fraudster who he made Secretary of State for Transport, and the other errors of judgment that he has made, the suits, the dresses, all of it. You can't trust Keir Starmer. The Labour Party is coming to that conclusion. They may have supported him tonight, but tonight it sounds like Theresa May, the last gasp of a government in desperate trouble.
Your passwords are your passwords, only for your eyes. But how safe is your phone or laptop or tablet? Well, watch this. I press one button and my phone is now shielded from hackers and prying eyes. ExpressVPN is your protector. Yes, you can protect all your passwords fast across multiple devices with ExpressVPN. Premium, fast and highly secure. Get big peace of mind for a low cost. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code to get up to 75% off, plus 4 extra months free, all backed by a 30-day money-back guarantee. Protect your online life today.
As always, let me know what you think, mailmog@gbnews.com. But now I'm joined by the journalist and Daily Mail columnist, Quentin Letts. Quentin, thank you very much for joining me. What happens next? They've all thumped the desks, they've all said he's marvellous, but don't you remember this with Theresa May?
They all go back to bed tonight feeling a bit knackered. Sorry, I can't really say that, but a bit pooped after a day of scintillating uncertainty. This was a Monday that really took one by surprise because we all thought that the McSweeney resignation or departure might lance the boil a bit. Not a bit of it. And the moment of peril today came around lunchtime when the cabinet all went quiet. Nobody from the cabinet was appearing, saying anything. What were they up to? And then we had another departure. The press secretary went. It really did feel as though Sir Keir was in proper peril at that point. And then Anas Sarwar, as you were just saying, tried to assassinate him and bungled it. Bungled it by telling the Prime Minister beforehand what he was going to do. If you're going to become an assassin, do not tell your victim beforehand what you're going to do. And the Prime Minister, therefore, was able to organise the cabinet ministers to release tweets or X postings offering their support to him just to coincide with Sarwar's assassination attempt. It has been one of those days where you're just not sure exactly what politicians are doing. Are they there to govern our country or are they there just to play games amongst themselves? And it really felt just like the sort of plotting that used to happen against Boris Johnson. It really is extraordinary to me that the parliamentarians have learned nothing from all those years of the Conservative Party's disarray, which you will yourself remember so well.
Well, I was intimately involved in and saw firsthand, and this reminds me of it, that you keep on thinking you can push it along for another day, and then something else happens, that there's always another event. And what's his name? Jonathan Powell must be in people's sights now.
He is, very much. Powell is going to be put under the microscope slides. But there are other more important events, arguably, coming along. First of all, there's a by-election coming. There are local council elections. And then there's going to be the release of further Mandelsonia, which is going to be a difficult reading, perhaps, for some members of the regime. So although they've got through today, and getting through today, no mean achievement, so I'll give them that. But they've got to get through the rest of the week, and then they've got to get through the by-election, they've got to get through the local elections. And so, I would be surprised. I find this extraordinary to say this about a man with such a majority who's just so recently been given to us by the electorate, but I'd be surprised if he's still Prime Minister around the time of the Chelsea Flower Show.
And that's probably in the interests of the people who want his job, because they don't want to get the blame for the coming election defeats. Angela Rayner has to deal with her HMRC affairs. Streeting has to deal with his close association with Peter Mandelson. They're all in a certain amount of difficulty at the moment, aren't they? And Andy Burnham doesn't even have a seat in Parliament. He might have another shot at it if he thinks there's a way to get the leadership. Angela Rayner
was there at that Parliamentary Labour Party meeting this evening. I went to it. It lasted for an hour. And Clive Lewis, a Labour MP passing by the corridor, he described it as the Battle of Little Big Horn, which, of course, was Custer's last stand. But Angela Rayner was at that meeting. She went in, although she's a backbencher, she went in the door reserved for the cabinet ministers, and she went in just after Keir Starmer. Now, that's one-upmanship. That is very good. And she looks as though it's all going to happen for her. I think probably she's counting a number of chickens before they've even been conceived. And also, as you say, the other candidates all have problems, so they all think they can get round them. Keir Starmer is the least sexy alternative. Maybe that's got something going for it, but the others all think that they've got a stab at it. And when you've got a cabinet like that, and you've got people like that on the benches, my goodness, it makes for bumpy passage.
Makes for bumpy passage, but do you think the British people would accept, as Prime Minister, somebody unelected to the role, didn't lead the party at the general election, who's been found to have made a serious mistake with her tax affairs?
No, I don't. I think it's a really terminal difficulty for her. And even if HMRC come out now and say, oh, we found it okay, we found that she hasn't actually broken the rules, I'm not sure that really is the get-out-of-jail card, because she's still... The voters might think, oh, that's a bit of a cook-up job. People are more sort of cynical than you and I would like them to be. And I just think it's difficult for her to get round that one.
I'm afraid I think if HMRC came out and said that it was all fine and it was wrong of them to have criticised her in the first place, people would think that HMRC had been lent on.
I find that impossible to believe that such a thing could happen, Jacob.
Well, yes, you're not the cynical fellow that we thought you might have been from some of your columns. And then Streeting, partly he's too right-wing, but partly he was very close to Mandelson. It's very funny he's removed all the pictures from his Instagram account.
Well, I always think that just draws attention to it. Why not just sort of leave them up on... it's clumsy taking stuff off the internet. If you've got terrible secrets, just sort of put them up on the internet and people won't read them until you take them down. But I think the greater problem for him is the fact that he's perceived to be right-wing. He's actually not. He's mad about Europe. And he's gone skittering over to the left a bit in order to try to attract support from the Labour membership. But it's considered that he is too much of a right-winger, and the Labour activists, I think, are well to the left of where our Wes is.